Speaking of which, let's get the final act of this section on. You've been a trooper to get... We're massively overrunning, I'm really sorry. I mean, I don't care. Please welcome your final act of this section, the fantastic Louisa Martin!
Oh goodness, how tall am I? Oh no, hang on.
Oh God!
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Always. Okay, so you've waited a long time to get to me. Thank you for your patience. I too have got a script. I could blame the menopause or a busy life, but I'm just really lazy and didn't learn it. So what I'm going to tell you is actually a true story. Top points for guessing who the person is in the room that it relates to. So this is about rehoming a feral rescue man. So a good few years ago, I had unexpectedly found myself single. I know, it seems hard to believe me, look at me. Don't laugh, son. So I'd come out of this long-term relationship. I'd been dumped, that was the unexpected bit. And my sex life could only be described as cancelled. Now, there's only so much handsomers can do, so after a while I decided it was time I needed a man. Now, I entered into the realms of online dating. Now, I'd realised that I'd just forgotten this bit. Oh no, I hadn't! Now, I'd entered into the realms of high-end dating. Now, I had dated on the internet previously, back in the day of Plenty of Fish. At this time, about 6 years on from the last episode then, I realised I'd shagged everyone on Plenty of Fish, which is basically where you go for a trade and a shag. So I had a set of wardrobes that needed building, and then the boiler went, so I kind of worked my way through that. So anyway, this time round, I decided I'd go high-end, get somebody that has to pay for it, you know what I mean? That never happened before. So I went off to Match.com, when the man has to pay. So what I didn't know was that Match.com is basically the human version of the RSPCA. When you're pushing 40, the only pets that are left have been discarded by somebody else and poorly trained, maybe a little bit vicious. So I decided I needed to set some requirements. Now I am from Doncaster, so which means the bar's pretty low. So the first requirement was I needed to have a job. Second one was no active addiction. Finally, all their own teeth. Now again, for Doncaster, that was a pretty big challenge, but I'm going to try my luck. Now once you're staring down the barrel of the menopause, you kind of realise you've got to take what you can get. We're no longer looking for Prince Charming, you know, we've been lied to by Disney all our lives. It's now gone from a Disney film to a Hitchcock, and we've set up for Norman Bates over Prince Charming. So there I was, user profile had been created, and I were really honest. Again, pushing 40, this was a while ago, I don't look really rough for the age. So pushing 40, you realise you've got to be honest, because again, it's dregs at the bottom of the barrel, isn't it? So I'd created my profile, and then it was time to choose a picture. Now, I'd been stung before. Previous first date I've been on, I walked downstairs and the babysitter goes, "Fucking hell, Lou, you're going to get done for fraud." So I've come up with an amazing concept, and you can all use this. I haven't copyrighted it yet, but it's called reverse catfishing. So this is where I found a profile picture of me, 2 stone overweight, hair scraped on top of my head, not a scrap of makeup on, in a wetsuit, hugging a dolphin. And I'm like, if you fancy me like this, things are only going to go up. And there's going to be none of that bullshit of when do I let him see me without my makeup on. So anyway, I get a hit. How far on have I gone? So after we'd been chatting for a while, he seemed alright, you know, he had a job. His picture, he had all his own, he had all his teeth in his head, so if they weren't all his own, at least he had bought some. Not sure about the active addiction bit at this point, but you know, 2 out of 3 is not bad. So we decided we'd go on a first date. Now, I was choosing the first date, and aside from the initial parameters, I needed to make sure he wasn't thick. So my choice of first date was the pub quiz at the Salutation in Doncaster. Now, I know there's a few Doncasterians in here tonight, but if not, if you're not familiar with the quiz at the Sal, it's like where Doncaster's cream of the crop quiz brains would go to test the luck every Tuesday night against the team of 10 teachers that were always in corner, even with non-PE teacher, and they would always win. So, work out if you stick or not. So I arrived in a taxi, obviously, responsible drinker back then. So I arrived, there he was, stood at the end of the bar, not so much Jason Momoa with a Magnum, more Mr. Potato Head with a pint. But he wasn't horrific to look at, if he did me from behind. And he was down with a pint of Guinness, another one already on the bar to be sucked up by him, and I thought, that's my man right there. Anyway, we came second in the pub quiz. Coming second was to become a common theme in our relationship. He got the second date. So like any woman in a new relationship, all the details have to go through your mates. You know, so I'd be sat in the office at work, every time my phone pinged, it'd be like, oh, is it Steve? And I'd be like, oh yeah, he's so lovely. Anyway, after a few weeks, we realised that after every date, he would either come back to my house or the taxi would drop him off on the main road. And he said, oh, just drop us here, just drop us here. He weren't taking me to his house. So me and the mates start to postulate why. You know, has he got some sort of weird doll collection? Or has he got a sex slave in his dungeon? Or a train set that takes over the entire of his ground floor? Or even worse than that, he's a fucking accountant. So on this particular day, I was like, right, bull bite horns here, come on. I said, right, you either take me back to your house, or I'm going home and that's it. So reluctantly, we trudge our way across Carhouse Road down into Hyde Park. And we get to his street, and you know, it's a normal looking street of terraced houses, nothing scary. You know, a few of the roofs didn't have any snow on them, but nothing unusual. Gets down to this 1900s mid-terrace house, looks normal, composite door. Fucking wanted one of them for ages. I lived in posh bit of Donny, but we're the only house on the street that still had UPVC, so I thought, this guy's made it. So, in we go. Now, this is where things start to change. He unlocks the front door and he pushes it open, and actually, it's not dissimilar to what the hallway is just strewn with mail. Like letters everywhere, no discernible filing system, not in neat piles, no way to differentiate between junk mail and letters of great importance, which, depending on your credit history, could be letters of mass destruction. So I've walked on past the hall, and the first room that comes to me on my right is the front room. You know, usually the pride and joy of anyone's house. This looked like a fucking building site. So it was full of half-started, half-finished, unstarted DIY jobs. There were bags of plaster everywhere, the skirting boards weren't on the walls, the fireplace were half bricked up. At this point, even Dion Dublin will not be able to see the benefits in this house. No positives at all. Definitely, have you read the auction pack, Our Homes Under the Hammer? So then we moved past to the staircase, and I dared to glance up there, and there were more piles of mail, as if trying to make a break to go over the top. Quickly walks past into the parlour, and this is when it hits me. 3-piece suite, covered in piles of laundry, which appeared to be clean. Draylon suite, I know. Then there was the TV and the PlayStation and an ironing board. The fucking ironing board was set up in front of the sofa at sitting height. I mean, who the fuck irons sitting down in front of the telly? This was just like the epitome of feral. So then we proceed into the kitchen, and this is where I feel there's a little glimmer of like chance that everything could be okay. So I walk into the kitchen and it seems pretty normal. I mean, it weren't a kitchen I'd have chosen, you know, it's clearly a single bloke had a choice in this kitchen, but it was clean, tidy, no clutter, maybe a little bit of dust. But alas, the protective function of my brain had lulled me into a false sense of security as I then cast my eyes on the recipe book, which was open on beef bourguignon. And then I realised the pages were actually stuck together. Now, this could have been the passage of grime, time and dust, or it could be the leavings of furious masturbations over, you know, some weird French cuisine fetish who's basically a posh stew. But I didn't wait to find out. So we ascend the stairs and I can feel my sense of dread foreboding, and I was starting to accept there was no sinister doll collection. There was no model railway, or let alone a sex slave in his cellar. No, this was clear and undeniable evidence that I was in fact dating a feral rescue man. I realised this man had been passed over for many years due to his inability to be trained to the desired standard. Now, the definition of feral states: existing in a wild or untamed state, potentially previously domesticated but since reverted to a wild existence. Now, I beg to query the second part, which was potentially previously domesticated. Now, I'm not too sure about this. It may have had something to do with my upbringing and my innate Pavlov's dog's reaction that if I'd left something strewn across the floor and I had used it, I would instinctively duck and cover from a flying missile leaving a parent's hand saying we were born in a fucking barn. But no, he was seriously he had seriously not been classically conditioned. So my understanding of classical conditioning is it results in a long-term presentation of the desired behaviour. Now, it would seem Steve was not brought to you by the school of Pavlov's dog, and more St. Trinian's. So, move on a few months and he comes to mine for a visit, and he still hasn't left. That was over 11 years ago. The first day, I make a joke. I even made a Facebook post about this. Any of you who are friends on Facebook with me may have seen it recently in my memories. He left a towel on the bedroom floor. And I joked about it, as if it went, oh, bless him, he's left a towel on the floor. As if you're letting off a puppy who shits on your rug because they're cute. So move on, 10 years on, Steve's side of the bedroom looks like what I can only imagine the inside of one of them charity bins in the car park at Sainsbury's looks like. You know, the ones where you take your shit clothes that you're too embarrassed to take to even the charity shop. That's his side of the bedroom. So, and his cooking skills are akin to the Swedish chef. I have found ragu on the ceiling of my kitchen. I have no idea how it got there to this day. His aim in the bathroom can only be attributed to his golf handicap. And so I've come to the realisation I have now rehomed a feral rescue man. So it's not all bad though. It's not all bad. I've got to say that because he's in the room. Yes, the trail of destruction he leaves behind is maddening. But at this stage in our lives, I do have a man who has zero expectations of me, which is actually quite refreshing. So it used to piss me off when I'd spent an entire day off cleaning the house and he wouldn't even notice, let alone follow the rule of do not shit in the toilet till the bleach has been down for at least an hour. You know. But no. What has happened is so clever. Now my mindset has shifted, because if he doesn't notice when I do the cleaning, he isn't going to notice when I don't either. So I am basically free, zero expectations. I can live my life exactly as I choose. and I may as well allow him the same courtesy. So, matching a feral rescue man with a middle-aged, neurotic, borderline OCD woman has actually worked. Does it still piss me off that I can find him wherever he may be due to the Hansel and Gretel-esque trail that he leaves behind him? Yes. But hey, I'm still here, over 11 years in, picking up after him, grumbling about his filth. So maybe it was the right time in my life for a project. I am definitely not going to get back in touch with the rescue centre and tell them we can't cope, because like most families who take on a rehoming project, we wouldn't imagine life without him now. I am just fearing the day where I look out to the back garden and see him using it as a litter box. Thank you very much, everyone.
I think we call that Steve Holmes under the hammer. Okay, so that is...